You're watching Diecast Breakdown with Chuck Ellis, David Johns, and Mark McHotwheel. So sit back, strap in, and hang on. The breakdown starts now.
Well, hey there, folks. Chuck here, and welcome to Diecast Breakdown. I am so excited you're with us today. We've got a great show in store for you. We will be talking to Ron Ruelle of the Model Car Hall of Fame. He is the creative director / wheelman, and we are really excited to get to know that organization a little bit better. But before we do, I want to make sure we thank our executive producer level patrons that make this show go. That would be Mr. Twice Diecast. Thank you, David. MrDrivendreams.org. Thank you, Mark. First and 64th Customs. Thank you, Christian. Video Geek Productions, thank you, Adam. And of course, Mr. Dane Self, who directly sends us cash every month to make sure this show continues to grow and thrive, and we are able to keep the lights on over here. If you want to know how you can join the ranks, you can visit diecastbreakdown.com or click the little join button down below your YouTube video. And while you're checking out diecastbreakdown.com, you can see our merch page. You can visit drivendreams.org, which is our charity, where we are raising 24,000 cars for kids in need in 2024. It's a really cool program that our co-host Mark has started, and it's one car equals one smile. We're really excited about that. We had a lot of great response at the Hot Wheels Collector Nationals a week or so ago, where we had a lot of people dumping off cars in the collection bins. It's been great. We're really excited to break that record this year. But with that out of the way, I want to introduce my co-host, Mr. David Johns. David, how are you doing today?
Doing good, Chuck. No place I'd rather be.
I agree. And we are not alone today. We are joined, as I mentioned earlier, by Mr. Ron Ruelle of the Model Car Hall of Fame. And Ron, thank you so much for being on the show today. Really excited to get to know you a little better.
Yeah, great to be here. Thanks.
So, for those who are somehow living under a rock and don't know what happens when they go to modelcarhall.com, what is the Model Car Hall of Fame? When did it start, and why does it exist?
Well, it started about 15 years ago, and it's changed hands a few times. So the current ownership brought me on to kind of run things creatively for now. But basically, we're here to honor and document the greatness of model cars. It was originally called the Diecast Hall of Fame, but a lot of people didn't know what that meant. So we changed the name to Model Car Hall of Fame, which I think opens it up a bit. But model cars, that includes high-end die-cast, like big 1/18 scale, several $100 models, down to, your 1/64th cars that you buy at the grocery store, to all sorts of toy cars, model kits, any sort of miniature vehicles are what we're about. And we're here to document the history of it and also point out the latest and greatest of it. That's kind of our mission.
And you come from a bit of a gearhead background yourself. Tell us a little bit about the world of wheels that you grew up in and why you picked model cars as your passion.
Okay, this is kind of fun because this is almost the exact same story that got me out of jury duty a few years ago.
I'm going to take some notes.
Yeah, this is great. My dad worked for AMC Rambler when I was just back in the 60s, way back then. And he was always a car guy, so I grew up in a car culture. I mean, he wasn't like a hot rodder or a mechanic, but he was, anytime there was a car show, he'd take me to it, or a car museum, we'd go to it and everything. And he owned some pretty cool cars over the years, and it kind of rubbed off on me. And I've always taken an interest in them through the years. I've owned some pretty interesting cars: 71 Buick Riviera, 59 Buick LeSabre. Currently have a first generation Miata with the pop-up headlights, and some other really fun cars over the years. And I worked for 17 years as a creative director for a car magazine. It was called Chevelle World. It was about Chevelles and El Caminos. And also I worked for Hobby DB over the years, documenting all sorts of pop culture and toys and collectibles, but a lot of die-cast and all that. So it's just a thing that I grew up with. But anyway, in this court case a few years ago, this is in Colorado, the first question they asked was, is anybody here an expert on American muscle cars? I'm like, yes. That's either going to get me on the jury or get me off. And the first question is, define resto mod. And I was like, well, okay. And then, I go into a detailed explanation of what resto mod means and explain that exact history I gave you. And of course, the prosecution loved me and the defense wanted me gone yesterday. So that was was, wow. I couldn't believe that first question. It's like, you got to be kidding me.
Right out of the gate.
Now I'm really intrigued as to what this case was about. Yeah.
It was a resto-mod gone bad, I guess. It was like taking years, going over budget, not going the way the guy wanted it. Yeah, everything that could go wrong, apparently. I kind of want, even though I couldn't afford to be on the jury job-wise, I kind of wanted to sit in and watch the case.
Right? Yeah. Like, there's definitely a lot of car tea being spilled in that courtroom. We love hearing, because, again, the reason this show exists is because we like getting to know the people behind the sites that we go to, the cars that we love. So we're talking about the things that you don't read in people's bios and blurbs. So that kind of stuff is really interesting to us. So how long have you been with the Model Car Hall of Fame?
I worked hobbydb.com. I started working there about 9 years ago, full-time, and then part-time, and then freelance. And I still contribute occasionally. And Christian Braun, who is HobbyDB guy, recently acquired the Model Car Hall of Fame and asked me to come aboard as the main creative guy on it. So it's great to be working with him again. I've always enjoyed this. So I only started it late last year. I had written for them occasionally in the past, just submitting some guest articles on behalf of HobbyDB. But yeah, now I'm mostly responsible for the creative content of the site. And when I say that the site is a Hall of Fame, it's also a blog. I mean, it's an active blog where we post several articles a week, industry news, fun listicles, like I did just one about what kind of car would the Easter Bunny drive, and illustrated it with model cars that were appropriate, interviews, redirects to, hey, here's a cool thing I saw on YouTube. Here's a neat channel you should watch, and a little article about that, and send it to its way. Says we'll do that for your site here when this interview posts too, and just list think pieces. In fact, just this morning we published a piece about how does 3D printing affect the collector market.
Right.
You can download a file, and again, I mentioned the Buick Riviera. I downloaded a file to print a 71 Riviera. I don't have a printer, but I can access one. Now the question is, what does that mean in a collectible thing? I could do that in any scale. I can do that in any color. So how do you collect them all? There's infinite possibilities to how many variants we can do. So what does that do? Like just owning the file, it becomes like an NFT, but it actually has a real legit purpose and an actual value. So anyway, thought piece there. And I'm going to be doing one soon about 3D printing replacement parts. I collect the old SSP cars, the Kenner SSP cars from the 70s. I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember those. I have one right here, the Smash Up Derby Bug-em. Yes. I have a pretty comprehensive collection of these cars. And there are certain pieces that just go missing off of these cars. And some people have tried molding them out of vinyl or whatever, and now some people are starting to 3D print them. It's like, oh, neat. Does that devalue the car if you have the rubber bumper is now a plastic 3D piece, or do we care? I mean, now it's a sort of complete car. Or could you recreate the entire car and devalue it? It's kind of interesting trying to figure out how to replicate these things. So that'll be a piece I'm working on right now. So hopefully next week.
Back with more Diecast Breakdown after this word from our sponsors. Legendary Hollywood concept artist and designer Fireball Tim Lawrence has created 3 exclusive pieces of automotive art based on the 3 hosts of Diecast Breakdown. Get these and other brilliant designs printed on mugs and more at fireballtimgarage.art today. Here's this week's small channel shout out.
Mad Eye Miniatures.
If you have a favorite Diecast channel with less than 700 subscribers and you'd like to see them highlighted on a future episode, email us at diecastbreakdown@gmail.com. And now back to Diecast Breakdown.
It's interesting when the one-to-one world comes into our scale world. I'm in an insurance, and automakers have debated the use of aftermarket parts on their vehicle and how it affects the value all the time. And here we are now talking about it in our hobby. Really,
exactly.
Really cool idea for an article.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to that one. So yeah, the like I said, the first one just posted this morning. There's all different varieties and quality of the modeling and everything. And some of them, they just show you a virtual model. Is that what it's really going to look like? And some actually show you the 3D piece, and it's like, oh, that's what it will look like. Cool. So I kind of like that.
Yeah. And not coincidentally, I'm sure the image for that article is a 71 boat tail Riviera.
Yeah, it's a kit. So what's weird is it contains a lot of the pieces, but it doesn't have the wheels.
Right.
But there are people who make 3D printed wheels, or 1/24th or 1/25th scale Buick model would have the proper rally wheels. So it doesn't have an engine either. But again, you could get a 455 engine out of certain kits, possibly.
Yes, and I see our friend Fireball released an article recently as well. He's been on the show quite a few times, and he's everywhere. It's funny. We were just at the Hot Wheels Collector Nationals, and everybody knows Fireball. He's everywhere. So.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I just interviewed him the other day. I just sat down with him earlier this week, and next week I'll be posting the article. I have to sift through over an hour's worth of. I'm sure once you get him talking about stuff,
oh yeah, you
just keep recording and let him talk.
Right, and he's got these amazing stories. We call him like the Forrest Gump of cars in Hollywood. Like he's just been everywhere. Like he's worked with everyone and done everything. And the first time we talked,
yeah, absolutely.
The first time we talked to him, he was like, "Yeah, I got karate lessons from Chuck Norris." And it's like, "Okay, dude, whatever." And then he's like, "No, I got pictures," and he posts the pictures. Like, okay, there's him as a kid with Chuck Norris in the karate gi. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I learned futurism from Sid Mead, directly from him. It's like, geez. So he came to Boulder and visited the Hobby DB headquarters several years ago. And he got like 2 episodes of his vlog out of that. Plus he went to the Shelby American Collection Museum, which is in Boulder. Oh my God, what a great museum. Just a joy to meet. So yeah, I'm looking forward to posting that article. And it's long enough where it might actually be 2 articles. We don't know.
Yeah, you had me a little bit too with your Lee Iacocca Head LeBaron article on April Fool's Day. That was fun. I was like,
oh, good, thank you.
Yeah, you had me going for a second. But yeah, it's a
that magazine cover haunts me to this day.
Right? Yeah, I was familiar with it before the article, and I was like, it was just familiar enough that I was like, I could see someone doing that just as like a weird thing. But then I was like, well, does anyone have a 1/43rd scale LeBaron casting already? I'm sure there is one. 1/43rd scale is this Wild West world where there's all kinds of crazy stuff happening now with weird Corvette amalgam models. And there's like one company that's doing like crazy, like old, I think it's like Lincolns or something that were really wild custom stuff like that. That's a very interesting scale for me. I've told myself,
oh, absolutely.
I'm sticking to 1/64.
Don't do it.
Do not do it. I used to do all scales, and it's overwhelming. Like 1/64 alone is overwhelming. But you add all the different things, and you're like, oh well, I collect Herbies, so I got to get the 1/12 scale Schuco Herbie that I saw is actually in the Hall of Fame, and I was like, I really gotta keep this small, otherwise I'm gonna have no room in my house at all. But
yeah, it gets tricky. Like the one car I'm a completist about is that Riviera, and I have it in everything from Micro Machines made several variants of it to the 1/18th. And I have just about every color of every car that everyone has ever legitimately released.
Sure.
Very few other cars. The Mach 5 from Speed Racer is another one that I collect pretty obsessively, but even then there's some really expensive ones. It's like, no, I can't justify that.
Yeah. In fact, I believe, David, you've got one of my customs that was a 71 Riviera that I gave to David.
I do.
Yeah.
Give it to me.
No, it's never leaving my desk again.
Send me a picture of it at least.
I will. I will do. That was one of my first customs, was the Johnny Lightning Riviera it's got the big engine coming out of the hood. I made it as a beater dragster, with like a rat rod style dragster.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's one of the things I love doing is rust, weathering, that sort of thing. So, and that car is just one of my favorite cars. Just, it's an iconic design. It's beautiful. The 71 to 73 Rivieras, the boat tails are just incredible.
Speaking of rusting and weathering, I did an article recently about Greenlight, did an article about the Tulsa-Rama Miss Belvedere, they call it, which they in 1957 for their centennial, they buried an actual brand new Plymouth Belvedere with stuff inside it. So it was a time capsule. It was wrapped in plastic and carefully wrapped to keep the moisture out. But plastic also keeps the moisture in. And when they dug it up 50 years later, it was just this rotten, rusted, just piece of garbage. And so Greenlight, they had a model of the 57 Fury for Christine. So they made a model of the rusted, rotted out version of the car. And it actually comes with, in addition to the screen printed grime, somebody actually goes in with some paint and blots some really rough rust along the bottom edges. So no two are exactly alike. So they released two, one as it went into the ground and one as it came out. And that was a fun art. That was one of the favorite articles. We got a lot of good reactions from that.
Cars in that scale with patina are really interesting to me. Auto World did a really good Christine as she is in the beginning of the movie that I really like. And Hot Wheels just did this announcement where they've got the hot rod, the Motor Trend Hot Rod 55 Savoy that's all patinaed out. That's really, really cool. I'm really excited about that. They did a really good job on it. I got to see the prototype at the convention. It looks fantastic. But anyway, we're diverging off the path here talking about the cars. But I'm really curious because the Model Car Hall of Fame, it's been around, like you said, for 15 years. Several of the people that have been on this show, Louis Tanahara, Chris Walker, were some of the first inductees into that Hall of Fame. Actually, Louis hasn't been on yet. He's just been talking to us. He will be someday. A lot of other guests, Eddie Castro, Larry Wood. So what goes into getting somebody in the Model Car Hall of Fame?
Yeah, so we have three categories of inductees. We have the models themselves. We have categories for different scales and a few for different types, like construction models or truck models that kind of fall outside of the mainstream. And then we have brands of the year. So what was the automotive brand that made a big difference that led to a lot of diecast or just moved the needle on automotive culture? And then the people. And like some of the people are the modern entrepreneurs. Some are longtime honorees, like someone like Larry Wood, who just half a century of just great design. Or some are even people who are long gone, but the founders of Matchbox or founders of certain companies and historians, content creators, things like that. So basically, we're just looking for people who really made a difference in the hobby of model car collecting, whether it be through the models themselves or through car culture. Like someone like George Barris didn't design model cars, but he designed real cars that became models. And even if they weren't models, they stirred the imagination of kids of a certain generation to do that sort of thing. So that's what we're looking for. Every year, kind of go through the process of trying to figure out who needs to be recognized here. And sometimes there's some real obvious ones. Sometimes it's like, okay, this person is sort of not as remembered as they should be, and let's bring them to the forefront and let's document them here and make them more famous as they should be. So that's kind of fun.
Ron, one thing I loved on the Hall's website, it talked about being a celebration.
Yes.
And that's what we're trying to do here on Diecast Breakdown as well, is it's not a competition for content. It's not a competition to see who can interview the biggest names. It really is just a celebration of the hobby. There's plenty for everybody. And when I want to talk about some of the names that we haven't mentioned yet, just to give the viewers of this episode, it's a grand scope here. We're talking about Ken Block. We're talking about Vincent Tang, the new president of Greenlight. We're talking about Tim Allen. And Tim Allen is in the same class as our friend Tony Karamitsos of Round 2.
Yeah.
What a cool place for collectors and really just car enthusiasts to get together with everybody. We're talking about big cars. We're talking about little cars.
Yeah. I mean, you talk about someone like Jay Leno. Just he obviously he's one of the greatest car collectors of all time. But you think about too, in the world of diecast, he was in one of the Cars movies, and there is diecast of a Jay Limo,
that's right,
call it, which is kind of neat. My daughter, she's 21 now, but her first movie she saw in the theater was Cars, the original Cars. And she was just blown away at this gigantic screen and these very loud sounds and the awesome visuals. And she just immediately, we didn't even get home. She was like, Dad, we got to go to the store and buy some. And so
Right.
we picked up a bunch of, and so she has, to this day, she still has them, a huge collection of the little Cars models. I mean, that stirred her soul there. I mean, really, we should think about Pixar's Cars being one of the brands or franchises of the year, just like Fast and Furious. That stirred the automotive culture. It's also produced a lot of diecast. So,
Yep.
in fact, I just did on Monday, Eclipse Day, I did an article about Mitsubishi Eclipse models, and most of them exist thanks to the Fast and Furious franchise. The model was first created to represent the cars in the early movies, and they've since been offered in more sedate paint schemes and things not related to the movie. But thanks to that movie, the Eclipse still exists on diecast more than it otherwise probably would have. So I think that's pretty cool.
I think the Cars thing is an interesting kind of cultural shift, I think, between generations. Because my nephews are late Gen Z, early Gen Alpha, and they love cars. Like, they've got tubs and tubs of the cars, and they like Hot Wheels and stuff. Okay, but they really prefer the personalities, the character aspect of the cars. And I think it's been an interesting thing because a lot of people kind of felt like the younger generations were not as interested in cars, and cars were kind of dying off. And then this kind of came alongside it and proved that cars are still relevant to kids. They're just in a little different way. And so I know some people kind of look down on the Cars diecast as something that is not quite the same, but I'm like, hey, if it keeps the kids interested and it can very easily spread them to looking into Hot Wheels premiums or Tarmac Works or something else down the line, then I'm all for it.
One of her first lessons in collecting was Sarge. That was a Jeep character, World War II Jeep. And the original one, they stopped producing it and recalled it because it had lead paint in it.
Oh.
So that car became very hard to get for a long time. And she wondered, why can't I get a Sarge model? And I had to explain to her this. And it's kind of like, we could try to find one on the bootleg market.
Sure.
And it was interesting explaining to her how this works. And it was kind of like, a lesson in collecting. Who knows?
Also a bit of historical authenticity to those Jeeps, probably.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Ron, if there are folks out there that are learning about the Hall for the first time right now, can they become more involved and bring their knowledge and their passion to the Hall and assist you in what you're trying to accomplish?
Oh my gosh, yes. First of all, read stuff, like stuff, share stuff to your social media. If you see an article you like, share it. Comment on things. Most of our articles are open for comments, and that's great. And if you're a member of the diecast industry, we have various ways to participate. If you're a company releasing some new models, send us a PR thing, and we're not going to slavishly run the whole thing, but we might feature some of it because we like to promote that sort of stuff. We also have sponsorship things. You can put an ad on the front page of the site. And this is a new thing, by the way, this year. All of our categories in the Hall of Fame inductions, which will be later this year, it's towards the end of the year, we have sponsors for each of the categories now. So if you own a diecast company or an automotive company or are just really interested in stuff, you can sign up to be the named sponsor. So your logo and your name will appear and links to your site and everything every time we mention that particular award. So we've been sending out emails. We just started this thing right now. So if you go to the sponsors or our categories link, you'll see a few sponsors on there because we're just starting this. So we've only got a few signed up at the moment, but their inquiries are coming in and everything. It's like, it's great. So that's a cool thing. So that's a way to get involved. But yeah, definitely share, like, subscribe. Actually, we don't have a subscribe button, I don't think, but follow our social media. We post a lot on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. So if you see something there that's cool, share it. That's pretty awesome. And we also take ideas for guest submissions. So if you have an idea for an article, could be a listicle or it could be just you found some rare model and just wanted to share it with somebody, let us know. And if we like the idea, we'll ask you to write it up. So that's pretty cool. So those are some ways that you can help. But there is actually a button at the top of the page, and there's a how to support, and there's various ways of just being you can even just be a patron if you just like the site and just want to donate some money. We have a patrons section where you can just donate one time, and thank you very much. We really appreciate it.
Yep.
It's like doing a Patreon sort of thing. So there's lots of ways, but just check in every couple of days for new content. And because like I said, we are a Hall of Fame, and our big thing is our late year inductions. But right now, I mean, we're posting several articles a week, which had not been the case under prior ownership. So we were like ramping that up like crazy. And I'm having fun with this. I really have fun.
Good.
I just wake up with an idea. The eclipse idea is like, yeah, I should write about eclipses. Yeah, I'm going to crank that out.
Nice.
And I didn't have to do a lot of research because I just, as a car culture guy, just kind of knew this stuff. And that was a lot of the fun of writing for Hobby DB too. I'd write an article about 10 Hot Wheels cars that look weird in certain colors because I just knew the Red Baron should be red. Duh. It looks weird in blue, you know.
The Purple Passion should be purple.
And certain others. Exactly. In fact, they even changed the name of it to just the Passion.
Yeah.
Passion 2. Yeah, they didn't really think that through the first time.
And you don't just write, you also are a bit of an artiste as well. I noticed you do a lot of drawings and cartoons.
Yes, I am a cartoonist. In addition to all those awesome toy cars I had as a kid, my grandmother worked for Western Publishing, which did Gold Key comics and Golden Books. And so every time Grandma came over, just armload of comics and books. And I just kind of read those comics and absorbed them as Disney and Looney Tunes and Walter Lantz, DePatie Frayling. And they were so well written and so well constructed that I learned good habits without knowing it. They were beautifully constructed comics because there are a lot of comics that are constructed terribly. And I could go on for hours about that. In fact, I used to teach a comics theory class at a community college. So I had like 4 hours of lecture time about this very thing. But just recently on Facebook, and I'm going to be sharing this to the Model Car Hall, there was a collection of comics called Mod Wheels in the early 70s from Gold Key. It was kind of cashing in on the whole popularity of Hot Wheels and Johnny Lightning and stuff. And by issue 7 in 1972, Kenner had been a big sponsor in all of their comics. And they said, hey, how about you use Kenner cars as the cars in these stories? So they basically did, you could say, a selling out or a licensing agreement. But from then on, all the cars on the covers and in the stories were either SSP cars or TTP, the Turbo Tower of Power cars. And so I recently posted the covers of their 19 issues. I have all of them. 19 issues of Mod Wheels. I posted the covers of each of them in order. And the ones with the SSPs, I showed them with the actual models that were on the cover.
That's cool.
And so I cross-posted that to the SSP forums and everything. So eventually I'm just going to do a write-up of all of that on the Model Car Hall just to bring it all together. But that was just a fun confluence of the influences in my early life there. So, but yeah, I've done comic strips, graphic novels. I actually wrote a sort of novel recently. They're on my other website, which is ronruelle.com. And let's see, I'm going to be at the Charlotte Heroes Con in June. So that's my next con that I'm doing. So shameless plug.
Not at all.
In fact, one of the things I do caricatures in that Ed Roth, Big Daddy Ed Roth Ratfink style of the giant bulging tires in the back and the engine and the characters with their eyes bugging out there. So I will draw you and your car in that style, that's fun. It's kind of a go-to doodle for me.
Yeah.
I drew one. I was just, sometimes I'll just sit there bored at a Comic-Con where nothing's going on. And that's kind of my default thing. I was drawing a Corvair in that style. And of course, being rear engine, it had to have this big 6-cylinder sticking out the back and everything. I was like, oh, wait, I have a friend who drives one of these, or used to drive one anyway. So it's like, so I'll draw him. And he happens to be an Episcopal reverend. So I drew him, his cassock and surplice, but the bug eye and the tongue and everything. And I wrote at the top of it, the power of Corvair compels you.
Nice. Well done.
And he asked me, can I buy that from you? I said, no, it's not for sale. And I framed it and sent it to him for free.
There you go.
And it's in his office at his rectory. So yeah.
Nice. And people, in case you didn't know, you can visit ronruelle.com and commission caricatures of your own for very reasonable prices. So go check that out. We'll link that in the description.
Absolutely, yes.
So,
yeah.
David, go ahead.
Okay, appreciate that.
Don't touch that dial. Diecast Breakdown will be right back after these messages. Diecast Breakdown is produced in partnership with Twice Diecast and Driven Dreams Org on YouTube. Check out their channels in the video description and subscribe for more epic Diecast content. Diecast Breakdown would like to thank Diecast Heroes Magazine for supporting this program. Diecast Heroes Magazine is the premier digital and print resource just for diecast customizers. Visit diecastheroes.com and see what the best customizers in the world are up to.
Hey, this is Larry Wood.
This is Derek from Honest Diecast.
Hey, this is Chad Reed from Round 2.
This is Mike from Gaslands.
The SRT Joe Vita Show.
This is Champion DJ K.
This is Mad Vision here.
This is Diecast Dude.
And you're watching Diecast Breakdown.
And now, the thrilling conclusion of this week's episode of Diecast Breakdown.
Let's go back to the inductions for the annual class. That's at the end of the year. Is that right?
Typically, yeah.
The end of the year.
At one point, we did some in-person, actual live events. Since COVID, obviously, that thing sort of fell apart, so we haven't done it since. We're working on, hopefully, this year doing one. It may get pushed to January, possibly, depending on scheduling.
Okay.
But we're hoping to do it as a live, in-person thing. But right now, for the past few years, we've announced the inductees in November.
Okay.
So the process... And again, it's kind of a fluid schedule because, again, we're recovering from the previous ownership, just totally dropping the ball on the site here. So sometime in May or June, we're going to ask for nominations for the various categories.
That's what I was looking for. Yeah.
So we're gonna ask people, hey, what is the best 1/18th scale model that came out this year? What's the best 1/64th? Who should be honored as the legacy brand of the year? Who should be the historian of the year, et cetera? So we'll take nominations for that up to a certain point. And then we have a selection committee. You mentioned like Luis Tanahara, Larry Wood, a few others are people who we will ask to kind of help narrow it down as needed and also submit other names like that. And then we'll open it for voting later in the year, and then we do the inductees, and we're hoping to make that a real thing. So in May or June, yeah,
that's what I was getting at. Is there's not a diecast Illuminati that meets in Scandinavia once a year and just picks.
Yeah,
you actually the public and the collectors and the people that are buying the products, you have a chance to make your voice heard and acknowledge and thank people for putting out these amazing products.
Although I would not be against an Illuminati meeting in Scandinavia. That sounds like a fun trip.
It sounds
My passport is ready. I'm good to go.
Yes. Right.
No, that does sound like fun. And since a lot of people ask, we do not have a brick and mortar Hall of Fame. Mm-hmm. People say, so where is it? I want to visit this. And it's like, well, the building doesn't exist. Right now, we are a virtual Hall of Fame, but at least we're documenting this history, and we've got it all down. And we're going to go back to, in recent years, we've been writing some in-depth articles about each nominee. In years past, they didn't do that as much. And so I want to go back and back to the very first days and just write a better history of each of those nominees or each of those inductees and shed some more light on it. Because at some point this stuff fades and disappears from collective memory. We have a feature on our site Mondays when we have the content. We have a feature called Collective Memories, where we ask readers to send in pictures of themselves as kids with their model cars.
That's awesome.
Whether they're playing with their Tonkas in the sandbox or building a model car or making Evel Knievel go off the roof into the pool, whatever. Send us those pictures. Tell us how you, at a young age, became engaged in that. So we would love to get just tons of those. In fact, just this Monday, we had a picture from Fireball Tim Lawrence.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We had one of me with a Johnny Lightning track with this gigantic loop-de-loop thing. which, oh my God, that was the funnest thing ever. And again, I've got my Smash Up Derby cars. I have the Evel Knievel stunt cycle. I have a bunch of my Hot Wheels and Johnny Lightnings. I mean, that stuff stuck with me. So I would love to see people contact us and send in those pictures and a brief description. It's a fun little bit of history to keep people engaged. So there we go.
It's so important too, because a lot of this stuff, as we've talked to other historians like Zarnock and Charlie Mack, so much of this stuff that you think that the brands are documenting or that the people would keep track of, they don't, and it fades from memory, it disappears. And so to have that group collective consciousness contribute and have it be stored in places like the Model Car Hall or HobbyDB or even podcasts like this one where we sit down and talk to people, and they get to say more than just a soundbite on a History Channel documentary or a blurb on Wikipedia or something, and really get to know the people behind this and the reasons why a car has this weird Easter egg in it, or why it has this particular feature, or stories that get. And that was, again, we were talking with Ian Woods at the National Collector thing, who worked with Matchbox, and he's got a lot of preserved prototypes and stuff that were saved from the Mattel acquisition, where they were told to basically just take all this stuff out and
scrap it,
run the forklift over it and destroy it. And he saved a lot of this history that just doesn't get saved because it's a business at the end of the day. They've got other stuff that they need to be doing besides taking careful history of stuff. So it's people like that, and people like you, and people like Christian Ron who make sure that stuff gets documented. And that's the really integral part of this hobby, is remembering why this car exists, why this particular thing is special, what sparked this idea.
Oh yeah. I did an article about Ryu Asada, who was the guy for half of his life. He spent half his life working for Mattel designing toy cars. He died, he was 42 years old, colon cancer. A few years ago. And just wrote about, well, here, I've got one right here. He did the NA Miata for Hot Wheels. And the original version of it had some sponsor decals on the side, and there was a little circle that said Ryu. So he put his name on there as a sponsor thing. This one, by the way, matches my actual Miata, so yay. But he did that. He did a Porsche, I think it was a Porsche 944, and under that big glass window that looks like an AMC Pacer, you can see a stethoscope in the back. And that was his doctor's car, his oncologist's car. And he said, I'm going to make a model of your car. And he put a stethoscope in. It's like, wow.
Yeah. And and
my God, that is just like, talk about an Easter egg.
And the Prelude was his parents' car with their actual license plate on it.
So I love that kind of stuff. I mean, just imagine having that kind of sway where it's like, I am going to make a model of this vehicle.
E-Freeze for you too.
And it's going to be awesome and because I want this to happen. And and just to have the power of being able to put your own license plate or those little tidbits in there, that just beautiful Easter egg. So that was a sad but fun article to write, just looking into how much passion he put into all that.
It was really cool being at the Nationals and seeing the designers introduce the new cars and have their little stories in there. Like one of them, it's an RX-8, I think, that he put a little box of pastries on the passenger seat because his mom had a pastry business. So it's fun seeing the little bits of themselves. And Brendan loves putting Tusky on the sides of his vehicles, or the 55 Gasser says Vitusky on the side of it.
Anytime he has a chance to put the driver's name on the top of the roof, he's going to have his name on there, which I love, And he's done several of his own cars, that custom Firebird without the hood. It's like, who doesn't want that kind of sway?
Exactly. We're still angling for our first cars to be made into diecast. I have a 64 Valiant that I actually drove to the Nationals. And
nice.
So I've had it since I was 15. We did a resto mod, to throw back to your previous conversation on it, to make it more drivable, more highway friendly. and more reliable. And so I've put 15,000 miles on it since the restoration that finished in 2017. And well, the rebuild, it wasn't really a restoration. And
Sure.
but yeah, so and David's got his 93 Saturn that he's still campaigning for. It is a good point though, because I feel like Saturn is a very underrepresented brand in diecast.
The Saturn Sky was a great way to go out.
It was.
My God, the Saturn Sky and the Pontiac Solstice. I saw two of them, or I saw one of each next to each other recently. I was like, I can't decide. I really love them both. Yeah, and it's like, I was like, someone parked there, and the other person was prescient enough to go, I have to park next to this. And I hope both of them got pictures and got to meet each other. But it's like, wow. And if I'd been there in my Miata, I would have parked there and said, okay, one of these things is not like the others, but it kind of is.
It is in a way. Those sports coupe roadster type vehicles, they're something special. That I have a friend who's also into Miatas, and so we both have slow cars. So we talk about slow car fast, and there's nothing like it. Driving a sporty little slow car is sometimes way more fun than driving a hypercar or something that's extremely built.
You can't wind it out. Yeah,
exactly. So,
well, especially around here, I live in North Carolina, near the beach. It's the land of the brodozer. So I'm sitting here in traffic in a go-kart, basically, next to these monster trucks.
Right, yeah.
And it's kind of like
squatted.
And I know there's people looking around like, and it's kind of like, wow, that thing's tiny. It's like, yeah, you should see it next to an MGB or a midget.
Exactly.
Holy cow. This thing looks humongous. But yeah, when I see it parked next to something that's like, really?
Yeah.
It's that tiny? I mean, my other car is a first generation Scion XB, the Xbox.
Yep.
In a super hyper loud yellow color. It is just obnoxious yellow. And people are like, you probably don't lose that in the parking lot. I'm like, actually, it's pretty tiny.
Yeah.
It has the same footprint. It's the same length and width as a Miata, believe it or not. But it's taller, but it's not that tall. It gets hidden behind the average station wagon now. So I have to look around. Oh, I see yellow glowing through there. Yeah. And
for the halo, because my car's a bright blue. So I can see the bright blue reflecting off other cars sometimes.
Yeah.
One of my favorite photos is it's a photo from 1975 that shows a 1975 MG Midget parked next to a 75 Lincoln Continental. And it looks like you could fit the entire MG Midget on the hood of the Continental.
The aircraft carrier hood. Yeah,
exactly.
Ron, are you aware that DCT Diecast team put out a recent Scion XB casting?
No.
Oh, it's amazing. You're going to have
Is it? Send me the link to that one. I'd love to have it.
That.
There aren't many. Matchbox did one. Hot Wheels did like a squishy one. It's like a tuned version. And then there's some really expensive ones. So I'm always looking for affordable ones. So send me that link. I'd appreciate that.
Sure.
Please. I enjoy what I do. It's so much fun. This is a hoot to write about toys and cars, and to a greater extent with the Hobby DB thing, just pop culture and action figures and stuff that I don't even have to research. I could just give you a listicle. I mean, we did a listicle about Barbie's best cars last summer. And it's kind of like, and only one of them was pink, surprisingly. But it was like, yeah, this is fun.
Yep.
So I'm sure you guys have the same feeling about your jobs or your, I don't know, is this even a job for you, or are you just doing this for fun? I mean, who knows?
Oh, we're doing it for fun right now.
This is fun. We're paying to do this.
Yeah, kind of the same here. It's kind of like one of these days it's going to pay off big. Now it's a passion project.
Yeah, but not today.
Yeah, exactly.
No, today's been great. This has been a hoot. I've enjoyed hanging out with you guys.
Well, as we wrap things up, Ron, once again, let's remind people where they can find you, follow you, all the important stuff they need to know.
Right. So it's modelcarhall.com is the website. You can look up that same thing, or look up Model Car Hall of Fame on Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn. We sort of have an Instagram presence, but it's not really our market as much, so we don't post there so much. But those other three are where to find us. And it's, like I said, every couple of days we're going to post some content on the blog. And we'll post on the social media, and we're just having fun playing with cars. Zoom. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the best way to describe it. We're not here to just have them sit on the shelf. We're here to enjoy them and to learn more about them and make them part of our own tiny worlds. Well, Ron, again, I can't thank you enough for being on. We're really excited to talk with you, and we talked with Christian a few weeks ago and get to know the people who are really documenting this and making our hobby kind of a permanent bit of automotive history. And again, we encourage everyone to go check out modelcarhall.com, subscribe to the newsletter, and read some of the articles, because there's some really good information, good history on there, and good people doing some really cool stuff with tiny cars. So check that out.
Well, thank you. It's been fun.
Oh, thank you so much. We've had a blast here, and we're looking forward to having you on again to talk more about tiny cars real soon. And again, thank you to our viewers, our listeners, wherever you're getting this show. Thank you so much for joining us again on this show. Again, shout out to our patrons who make the show go. If you want to know more about that process or how you can help us pay for all the expensive stuff like this app that we use to make the show, please check it out. Shout out again to our co-host Mark and Kimber, his wife, and their little baby at home. Shout out to them. Best wishes. And again, thank you for liking, subscribing, sharing, and please check out other videos on this channel if you enjoy it. That's a really good way to tell YouTube that you like what we're doing. We've got shorts, we've got custom car builds, we've got David's reviews, my reviews. We've got some really cool stuff coming up, even with the Car Wars brand that I'm really excited about. So be sure to like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And as always, we want to thank you for coming along with us for the ride. So until next time, stay fresh, cheese bags.
Thanks for listening to Diecast Breakdown. If you enjoyed today's show, please rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts and tell a friend to listen in. Find Diecast Breakdown on your favorite social media platforms or visit diecastmedianetwork.com to learn more about this and our other projects. Diecast Breakdown is a presentation of Flying Valiant and the Diecast Media Network.